That question gnaws at my thoughts in the stillness of the night, when the house is enveloped in silence and my husband's rhythmic breathing punctuates the darkness of our bedroom. Yet it wasn't always this way. There was a time when my life unfolded in the realm of the ordinary, predictable, even mundane. A 42-year-old woman, nestled in a stable marriage, residing in a comfortable home, and navigating the complexities of a stepson I believed I understood. Until that fateful day when I truly saw him. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind where the air hangs heavy with unspoken truths. My husband, Grant, had departed for a business trip that morning, leaving behind a palpable tension, or a fleeting kiss as he departed, akin to brushing away an annoying fly. We hadn't truly connected in months, not in the way a wife longed for connection. I was ascending the stairs with a basket of laundry, my thoughts dulled by the monotony of daily life, when I caught it, a low, muffled groan emanating from behind Ethan's door. My stepson, 21 years old, all lean muscle and restless energy, exuded a confidence born of youth and the belief that the world owed him something. I should have continued on my way, but I found myself pausing. The door was slightly ajar, just enough to allow a glimpse. A sliver of light spilled into the dim hallway, and then I saw him. Ethan was sprawled on his bed, shirtless, one hand gripping the headboard. Lost in a private moment he thought unseen with slow, deliberate strokes. His body was tense, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The sight of him, so raw and uninhibited, sent a jolt through me that I hadn't felt in years. I knew I should have turned away, but my feet stayed rooted to the spot. His fingers tightened, his hips lifting slightly off the mattress as he lost himself in the rhythm. A flush creeping up, his chest and abs flexed with every movement, and then, God help me, he let out a rough whispered curse, his head falling back against the pillow as his body shuddered. My throat went dry, my pulse hammered in places I had forgotten could ache. That was the moment everything changed, because for the first time in years, I felt alive and I wanted more. That's what I tell myself now anyway. Back when my life was still something I recognized, back when I was just Claire, the devoted wife, the reliable stepmother, the woman who kept the house spotless and the wine flowing. If I waited for my husband's return, but my devotion began to wane as it seemed no one noticed my absence. I met Grant 7 years ago at a charity gala. One of those formal champagne-soaked events where affluent men congratulate themselves for their generous donations. He was handsome in that polished corporate manner, with salt and pepper hair and tailored suits, though his smile never quite reached his eyes. A widower with a 21-year-old stepson, he was a man in need of someone to fill the voids in his life, and I was lonely enough to accept. First, it was sufficient. The grand house nestled in the suburbs, the coveted country club memberships, the hushed whispers about how she had truly hit the jackpot behind my back. Yet, the reality was that Grant didn't love me. He adored the notion of me, a polished wife, a comforting presence in his bed, a woman who wouldn't pry too deeply when he worked late or returned home reeking of another's perfume. And then there was Ethan, perpetually brooding when I first moved in, all scowls and slumped shoulders, glaring at me as if I were an unwelcome guest. I tried, oh how I tried, packing his lunches, attending his soccer games, games played in silence, feigning indifference to the sound of his bedroom door slamming shut, yet we remained worlds apart. It wasn't until he matured that the boy I once knew vanished, replaced by a figure of striking presence. His jaw had sharpened, his voice transformed into a deep timbre that resonated within me, stirring an unsettling excitement whenever he spoke. The way he regarded me at times felt charged, as if he recognized me in a manner his father never had. For years this awareness coursed through me, igniting a thrilling danger that I chose to ignore. Until that fateful afternoon when I found myself standing outside his door, my body alive with sensations I had long forgotten. A decade later, that night I lay awake, Grant snoring beside me, my skin still feverish from what I had witnessed. I replayed it in my mind, the way Ethan's muscles tensed, the hitch in his breath, the movement of his fingers. Yet, I found myself unwilling to stop, and that realization terrified me. For the first time I craved something unattainable, and worse, I began to believe he might feel the same. That's what I told myself the morning after I saw Ethan, repeating it like a mantra while scrubbing the kitchen counter, folding laundry, pouring coffee, anything to keep my hands occupied. My mind lay in a haze, yet my body retained every vivid detail. Each time I shut my eyes, his image flooded my thoughts. The sheen of sweat on his chest, The way his fingers danced, the raw, unfiltered pleasure etched across his face. These memories haunted and consumed me. Then, 3 days later, he truly saw me. It unfolded in the kitchen while Grant was away again on another business trip, a pretense I had long ceased to believe. The house felt eerily silent, the air charged with an electric tension. I wore a sundress, one I hadn't dared to wear in years, clinging just a bit too snugly. Tightly, I reminded myself that I hadn't dressed for him. I was deceiving myself. Ethan entered shirtless, still glistening from the shower, a towel hanging low on his hips. Water cascaded down his chest, tracing the defined contours of his stomach before vanishing beneath the fabric. My throat went dry. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. I couldn't find my voice. He smirked as if he could read my thoughts, and reached past me for the coffee pot. His arm brushed against mine. A mere flicker of contact, but it sent a jolt through me, weakening my knees. I should have stepped back, but I didn't. He poured his coffee slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving mine. Then he took a sip, his lips curling around the rim in a way that made my stomach clench. "You okay, Claire?" he asked, tilting his head. The way he said my name like it was a secret between us unraveled me. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. And then, God help me, I leaned in just an inch, just enough for him to feel the heat between us. His breath hitched, his fingers tightened around the mug, and then the doorbell rang, and we jerked apart as if we had been scorched. It was the neighbor inquiring about a misplaced package, a mundane interruption that should have pulled me back to reality. Yet it didn't. When I turned back to Ethan, his eyes were dark with something wild, something hungry, and I understood that this wasn't over. It had only just begun. The days following that kitchen encounter stretched like taffy. Sticky, slow, and impossible to ignore. Grant returned home, his suitcase barely grazing the floor before he immersed himself in emails and conference calls. Everything but me and Ethan. Ethan watched. I felt his gaze like a physical touch, lingering on the curve of my neck as I bent to pick up a dropped napkin, tracing the outline of my thighs when I crossed my legs on the couch. He didn't speak about what almost happened. He didn't have to. The air between us thickened with every passing hour. Then on a rain-soaked Thursday, Grant left again. "Emergency meeting in Chicago," he said, already scrolling through his phone as he kissed my cheek. Back Sunday, the moment the taillights, as his car vanished down the driveway, the house seemed to exhale, and Ethan emerged in the doorway of the living room. Clad in sweatpants and little else, his chest still glistening from a post-workout shower. A smirk danced at the corner of his mouth as he leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "Alone at last," he said. My pulse roared in my ears. I should have made an excuse, should have locked myself in my room, should have called a friend, a therapist, a priest. Instead, I took a sip of wine and held his gaze. "Looks that way," he said, pushing off from the doorframe. The doorframe framed him as he approached with the quiet confidence of a predator, fully aware of how the couch would yield to his weight when he settled beside me. He sat close enough for me to catch the clean, sharp scent of his soap. "You think about it too," he murmured, his knee brushing against mine. "Don't tell me I'm wrong." His fingers traced idle circles on the couch cushion, mere inches from my thigh. "Tell me you haven't been lying in bed at night, imagining what it'd be like." The wine glass trembled in my hand as he leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "I know you have." Then the garage door groaned open, and we flew apart just as Grant's voice called out, "Forgot my damn passport." Ethan's eyes burned into mine as his father's footsteps neared. "Tonight," he mouthed, then he was gone. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked past midnight. As I lay rigid in bed, every nerve in my body screamed. Grant's flight had taken off hours ago. The house was silent, except for the occasional creak of settling wood. Or was that footsteps? My skin prickled with anticipation, with dread, with need. Fierce, the doorknob turned. Moonlight spilled through the crack as the door inched open, revealing Ethan's silhouette, broad shoulders, tousled hair. The faint glow of his eyes locked onto me. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The hunger radiating from him was answer enough. My breath hitched as he stepped inside and closed the door with a soft click, the lock engaging. The mattress dipped under his weight as he crawled toward me, his movements slow, deliberate. The scent of his cologne, something dark and spicy, was nothing like Grant's, wrapping around me like a shroud. Around me, my fingers twisted in the sheets, torn between pulling him closer. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "We wanted." His thumb brushed my lower lip, and his hand slid down my neck, over the lace of my nightgown, tracing the curve of my hip. Everywhere he touched, my skin burned. My body arched toward him of its own volition. And then his mouth was on mine. The kiss was gentle yet claiming, desperate, the kind of kiss that rewired your DNA. His teeth grazed my lip, his touch lingered near my face, a silent tension filling the air. I gasped into him, my nails, as I sank into the warmth of his shoulders. The haze enveloped us, and I barely registered the sound of the world faded away, only the warmth between us remaining. Yet I didn't care. His body was a furnace against mine, all hard muscle and barely contained desire. "Tell me to stop," he growled against my throat. I didn't want to. I craved this, his hands, his mouth, his name lingering on my lips. Everything blurred into a singular, shattering moment, the world narrowing to the weight of him, the friction between us, the way he whispered "Claire," like it was both a prayer and a curse. Then a car door slammed outside and we froze, the sound of tires echoing in the stillness. The sound of gravel crunching underfoot echoed in the stillness as Ethan swore, rolling off me just as headlights swept across the bedroom curtains. Panic clawed at my throat. "Back door," I hissed, shoving Ethan's clothes at him. He dressed in seconds, pausing only to drag his thumb over my kiss-swollen lips. "This isn't over." Then he was gone, slipping into the shadows just as the front door creaked open downstairs. I scrambled to straighten the sheets, to slow my breathing, to wipe the evidence of a devastating choice from my face. But nothing could erase what we'd done, and as Grant's presence loomed, the weight of our actions hung heavy in the air. Footsteps ascended the stairs, a singular truth reverberating in my mind: do it again. The weeks following that night blurred into a haze of stolen glances and feverish touches. Grant remained blissfully unaware, consumed by work, golf outings, and everything but his wife. Meanwhile, Ethan and I honed our skills in deception. A brush of fingers while passing the salt, a lingering kiss masquerading as a goodbye peck when Grant's back was turned. We were cautious yet reckless. We were destined for ruin. The first crack emerged on a Sunday morning as Grant shuffled through the mail at the breakfast table. I choked on my orange juice when Grant suddenly frowned at a credit card statement. "Claire," he said slowly, "why is there a $300 charge from the Grand Hyatt last Tuesday?" Panic flooded my veins. That was the afternoon Ethan's fork clattered onto his plate. "Oh, that was me." He flashed his father an easy grin. "Study group at the hotel. Forgot my card, so Claire covered it." Grant's eyes narrowed. "You had a study group at a luxury hotel?" "Networking," Ethan corrected smoothly. "You're always saying, connections hold greater significance than grades." The deception should have become apparent at that moment. Yet, Grant merely grunted and discarded the bill, prompting me to release the breath I had been holding. That night, as I scrubbed at non-existent stains on already clean dishes, Grant appeared in the kitchen doorway. "You've been distracted lately," he remarked, causing the sponge to slip from my fingers. "Just tired," I replied. He stepped closer, his cologne, an unremarkable yet costly scent I had come to loathe, filling the air around me. "Maybe we should get away, just the two of us," he suggested, his hand resting on my hip as it once used to. The first time he'd touched me in months, and all I could think was how Ethan's hands were rougher. I forced a smile that sounded nice. He kissed me, a dry, perfunctory press of lips. When he pulled away, his gaze dropped to my neck, to the faint mark Ethan had left last night. "You should be more careful with your jewelry," he murmured. The clasp left a mark. The lie hung between us, thick and suffocating. 2 days later, I came home to an empty house and a note on the fridge. "Gone fishing with Dad. Back Sunday." The air left my lungs in a whoosh. A fishing Grant hadn't mentioned a trip. My fingers trembled as I dialed Ethan's number, straight to voicemail. Then the landline rang. "Mrs. Whitaker," a woman's voice clipped and professional. "This is Nurse Simmons at St. Luke's. Your husband was brought in with chest pains." The rest blurred together, collapsed at the office stable now, asking for you. I raced to the hospital, my mind spinning. Grant's private suite was eerily quiet when I entered. He lay propped up on pillows and four snaking from his arm, his face ashen, and Ethan stood at the foot of the bed, our eyes locked for a fleeting moment, yet it lingered just long enough to reveal the guilt, the fear, the simmering heat beneath it all. Grant's voice cut through the stillness. The doctor says it's stress-related. His gaze fixed on me. Imagine that. Ethan cleared his throat. I'll give you some privacy. The door clicked shut behind him. Grant paused for a heartbeat before reaching into his bedside drawer. My stomach plummeted as he tossed a stack of photos onto the blanket, grainy yet unmistakable. Ethan and me in the hotel lobby, Ethan's hand on a thigh pressed against the parked car. Ethan held me against our front door. I hired someone last month, Grant said calmly after the credit card incident. The walls seemed to close in around me. Grant, I started, but he leaned back, suddenly looking every one of his 53 years. Here's what's going to happen. You'll pack your things tonight. You leave. And if you ever contact my stepson again, these photos go to every news outlet in the city. The ultimatum should have shattered me, but all I felt was relief, until I got home and found Ethan's note taped to my suitcase. Meet me at the Hyatt, room 712. We'll figure this out. I stood there for a full minute, the paper crumpling in my fist. Then I reached for my keys because some poisons, no matter how deadly, you just can't quit. Final notes. Claire's story ends where it began, at a hotel with a choice, but this time the consequences will be permanent. The fallout, divorce, scandal, Ethan's eventual resentment will haunt her. Yet, in this moment she chooses desire over dignity. The elevator ride to the 7th floor of the Grand Hyatt felt like ascending to my own execution. The reflection in the mirrored walls revealed a woman I scarcely recognized. Her mascara smudged, fingers trembling, lips still swollen from Ethan's last kiss. The ding of arrival sent my stomach lurching. Room 712's door was slightly ajar, and as I pushed it open, I found Ethan silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights casting streaks of gold and shadow across his bare torso. A half-empty bottle of bourbon rested on the nightstand beside my favorite perfume, the one I kept hidden in my lingerie drawer. He had planned this. You came, he said without a turning around. My voice emerged into the open air. You knew I would. That's when I saw them, the duffel bags by the closet, 2 of them. Ethan finally turned, his eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. We're leaving tonight. Dad's freezing the accounts at midnight, but I've got cash enough to get us to Mexico. The reality of it hit me like a slap. No more house, no more country club lunches, no more pretending, just unfamiliar beds in places far from home, running from a scandal that would follow us forever. I should have been terrified, so why did my pulse race with something else? A dangerously close to hope. Ethan closed the distance between us, his calloused hands framing my face. Say yes, Claire, he urged, his thumb tracing the hollow under my eye. The kiss that followed tasted like drinks shared in moments of reckless hope, and I melted into it. Ethan's grip tightened on my waist. Don't answer it. The knocking turned to pounding. Mr. Whitaker, front desk. Ethan swore, storming to the door while I hastily straightened my dress. He opened it just enough to glare through the crack. The clerk's voice wavered. Your father's downstairs with the police. Sir, they're demanding access to the security cameras. Time seemed to freeze as Ethan slammed the door and turned to me, his chest heaving. I stood still, paralyzed by the sudden flood of thoughts. Tabloid headlines, hushed whispers at PTA meetings, my sister's tearful. How could you? Ethan would bounce back. 21-year-olds always do. But me, a woman nearing 40? I would become a punchline. Ethan grabbed my arm, but I wrenched free. This was never about us. The words tasted like ash. This was about you hurting your father. His jaw tightened. You don't mean that. But I did. The realization struck me with brutal clarity. I had been a pawn in their twisted father-son war, and I had walked into it willingly. The world outside roared to life in the distance as I reached for the room phone. Ethan's eyes widened. What are you doing? He asked. Calling Grant, I replied, my voice eerily calm. It's over. For the first time, Ethan looked afraid. The last thing I saw before the police arrived was his face, beautiful, furious, and finally seeing me as something other than crossed unspoken boundaries, a cautionary tale, a woman who chose herself too late. the divorce papers. Arrived on a Tuesday, Grant maintained the house, the cars, the respect of his peers. I settled into a studio apartment, accompanied by a Google alert that still pings whenever Ethan's name surfaces. Fraternity parties, a messy youth unfolding online, a TikTok video of him laughing with some blonde sorority girl. Sometimes, very late at night, I trace the hotel card I stole from room 712, wondering if he ever thinks of me. Then I pour another drink in attempt to forget. Claire's life after the scandal unraveled like a threadbare tapestry, each frayed strand revealing the ugly truth beneath. The meticulously crafted illusion of her once privileged life faded with each dawn, as she awoke in a shadowy studio apartment, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and lingering regret. The solitary window framed a view of a grimy alley, where overflowing dumpsters bore witness to the discarded remnants of others' lives. This stark reality stood in sharp contrast to the sunlit master bedroom of her former marital home, where she would languidly recline in silk pajamas, awaiting the arrival of the housekeeper with her breakfast in bed. Now that indulgence had been supplanted by a chipped mug of instant coffee, its heat scalding her tongue as she scrolled through job listings on her or a cracked phone screen, her once manicured nails now bitten down to the quick, the diamond wedding band long pawned to pay the first month's rent on this pathetic excuse for a home, where the shower never got quite hot enough and the neighbors fought loudly in languages she didn't understand. Her days spent fielding calls at the dental office, where Dr. Rosenbluth's wandering hands and stale breath made her skin crawl. But the $17 hourly wage kept the lights on and the drinks shared in moments of reckless hope, the kind that came in cardboard boxes, and left her with headaches that lingered long after the bottle was empty. A throbbed behind her eyes like the haunting recollection of Grant's revulsion as he had flung her suitcase down the front steps of their colonial mansion, while the neighbors feigned indifference from behind their curtains. Her nights became a grim routine of frozen dinners consumed directly from the container, as she spiraled through Ethan's social media. There he was on a yacht in Miami, his arms draped around a sun-kissed co-ed whose laugh lines remained untouched by shame and regret. There he was, pledging some fraternity with his father's wealth, untouched by the scandal that should have brought him down as well, left her to bear the brunt of their shared folly. There he was, indulging in the life she had once envisioned for them, a life born from the intoxicating mix of desire and desperation during those secret afternoons in hotel rooms, where the sheets carried his scent and the mini-bar champagne offered a taste of freedom. Now he was just another specter haunting her dismal existence, alongside a pile of unpaid bills gathering dust on her kitchen counter, and the eviction notice stubbornly affixed to her door, which she chose to ignore. She returned home after yet another soul-crushing day at the office, where the other receptionists whispered about her, believing she couldn't hear their pitying glances, each one a knife twisting in what remained of her pride. Her once lustrous hair now lay dull and brittle, a casualty of stress and cheap shampoo. The designer wardrobe she once flaunted had been replaced by thrift store sweaters that itched and stretched at the seams. Her social circle had evaporated like morning mist when the scandal broke, leaving only her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Petrovich, who sometimes brought over, as she found herself in a world where language failed her, unable to voice the uncomfortable questions that lingered in her mind. On those rare nights spent in the dim light of forlorn neighborhood bars, men half her age would buy her drinks, eager for tales of the mother who had kissed her stepson, as if she were merely a walking urban legend rather than a flesh-and-blood woman. In the greasy diner, where she sat alone with her grilled cheese sandwiches, she would sometimes catch her own reflection in the window, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed figure staring back at her. The crow's feet deepened with each passing month, marking the time spent in this purgatory of existence. The existence of the weight she'd lost made her clothes hang like sacks, though no one was around to notice or care. The voicemails from her sister went unanswered because she couldn't bear to hear the disappointment in her voice again. The way rainy afternoons made her bones ache with memories of that first fateful encounter outside Ethan's bedroom door, when her life still held promise and her skin still tingled with anticipation instead of regret. The way she still sometimes touched herself at night, imagining his hands on her body before the overwhelming tide of shame would crash down, leaving her weeping into a pillow that carried the scent of mildew and unkempt hair, much like her trembling hands as she poured her morning coffee from the battered percolator, the finest possession she had left. It was the same way she had succumbed to old habits creeping back during sleepless nights, the nicotine numbing the insatiable yearning for something greater that gnawed at her insides like a restless creature. She would lie awake, listening to the wailing sirens outside her window, pondering if this was all there would ever be. This unending expanse, of lonely days and emptier nights, life distilled into a cautionary tale. A walking monument to the price women pay for desiring too much from the wrong people. Her name, forever searchable, lingers as that stepmom in forums and Reddit threads where strangers dissect her downfall with clinical detachment. Her entire existence reduced to a footnote in someone else's narrative, she drifts through the days like a ghost in her own life, waiting for something that will never come, yearning for something she can never possess again, transforming into someone she was never intended to be.